Hello and welcome to BTV. We have a new section called The Bright Side, and the first person here with us is Akash Banerji, Head Advertising Video on Demand, VOOT, the OTT platform from Viacom 18. Hi Akash.
Hi Anushri.
How are you?
All's good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So 3 years of VOOT?
3 years of VOOT, but 4 years in Viacom 18.
4 years in Viacom 18. If you will tell us the brand journey from the time you started VOOT, which I essentially remember had TV content, to the point that you went out with originals, and now it's a different ball game with VOOT Kids and everything else, VOOT Studios and films, right?
Yeah. Well, it's been a maddening, chaotic, but a very, very exciting journey for me. We launched VOOT in May 2016 with the ambition of becoming a top OTT platform in this country. And I think we have done reasonably well for ourselves because we continue to be now the top 3 OTT platforms in the country within the AVOD category where we currently operate. I still remember in our first year, the big ambition was also to try and hit 1 billion minutes of watch time. And we said in 12 months time, if we can do that, I think we would have done reasonably well for ourselves. We hit the 1 billion mark in a month in the first 6 months itself. We hit our 50 million MAU number in about 2 years time. One of the big things, one of the big tenets, one of the big beliefs that we as a team always have had is that this business can only succeed if you can drive daily habit. And if you can get consumers to come and spend enough and more time on our platform.
Sure.
And the entire product journey, the tech journey, the marketing acquisition, and the kind of content that one needs to create was all geared towards making watch time as the holy grail, as the biggest business metric for our platform. And what we very clearly saw and what we continue to see even right now is that VOOT is still the #1 OTT platform in the country which has the highest engagement. And by engagement, I mean average time spent per day per viewer, which is close to 50 minutes odd.
50 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was initially how much when you started?
We started off with 20, 25, 30 minutes, 35. Every quarter, we saw the numbers changing, the numbers increasing. And a couple of months back, we also did a big announcement where we said the VOOT platform has also now managed to hit 100 billion minutes of watch time cumulatively. So which was a very, very big number for us. And we were very, very clear that this has to be a big holy grail for us, is because getting users on a digital platform is actually a very, very simple thing. You can run multiple incent-based campaigns. You can get shady users, you can get bad quality users just to drum up your user numbers.
Correct, but
engagement and retention are the 2 big tenets that we constantly focused on.
So this portion is something, I mean, you started with a lot of TV content, you moved up to branded content, then you had your originals also gradually coming in, right? I wanted to speak about the branded content part because like we were discussing, and that time I remember that particular show caught my attention. I think
Stupid Man's
Smart.
Yeah.
So from there to now, how has the branded content piece evolved? And it's very important for an AVOD platform like VOOT because advertising is the main source of revenue for you, right?
Yeah. Look, our first foray into the branded content space with Stupid Man's Smartphone was pretty much an experiment for us, where we tied up with Vodafone and Motorola to create this really interesting piece of content. And we got the best of the producers and the best of the writers to create something like this. And we said, hey, you know what? We continue to have one big bucket of content, which is your network content that drives a lot of depth for us, that drives a lot of engagement for us. Then you have another pillar of content, which is your originals, which is a big acquisition driver and which is a big perception driver, because we all love to talk about digital originals, which is now the new buzzword in the OTT category, though it still remains, the jury is still out on how many people have actually seen multiple originals
Yeah.
They would know about it, but I don't know how many of them have actually consumed it, right? And the third big pillar was the entry into the branded content piece.
Correct.
And why did we enter the branded content piece? Happened on the back of a very simple reason. We realized that in this new marketplace, the 30-seconder TVC had very clearly got dismantled.
True.
Okay, on a digital, a 30-seconder TVC, the kind of narrative it has,
True.
just doesn't cut ice anymore. Marketers, brand managers, they were all creating a lot of short duration creatives, your 6-seconders, 10-seconders, which actually helps in driving conversions,
Correct.
right? And 30-seconder TVC had no relevance. And we said, there is another piece of long form content that we could potentially create for advertisers, we could potentially create for brands, which is garbed under your content, which is garbed under the header of a story, but which still carries the advertising message. And we also realize another thing, that brand managers, a lot of advertisers, they do not necessarily have the expertise to create that kind of long form content. Agencies,
True.
they only know, and even till date, they only know how to create a great quality 30-seconder.
Correct.
They don't know how to create a 10-minuter, and they certainly don't know how to create a series out of it.
Sure.
And on the back of the strength that we had as a part of our network and our own VOOT content team, we said, let's double down on that. This was a year and a half, 2 years back. From there, I think we have now partnered with more than 10, 20 odd brands. And in fact, we launched a new program called VOOT Studio,
Okay.
which actually works with different brands
Okay.
in giving them specific creative solutions,
Okay.
but not limited to creative solutions alone.
Content also.
Creative solutions, content solutions, and solutions which are supposed to drive their business
Businesses.
metric.
Oh,
right?
that's
So we
interesting.
we worked with TikTok, we worked with KFC, we worked with multiple partners. In fact, we just did something recently with Pedigree. We are also working with L&T right now, where we create the content for them, then we push the content on our platform, we run a lot of inventory around them, we also integrate that specific content with our celebs, and using a lot of our specific tabs on our product that can help discover that content on our platform, and also definitely ends up having higher click-throughs, which can drive specific business numbers for the brand. And I think this is where we are also different from a TV broadcaster, because a TV broadcaster can also create content, but it cannot drive performance initiatives for the brand.
The other thing was that we were talking about creating content around content, and one of the big examples is Big Boss, right?
Yeah.
Every year it comes, the show is actually aired, that goes on VOOT, goes on TV, and you have a lot of content around it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what drives the usage of the platform. That's what brings the advertisers to the platform, and hence you are able to get the right set of eyeballs, right?
Absolutely. So this entire story of content around content is largely on the back of driving more fandom or fueling the fandom. For big reality shows, whether it's a Big Boss or a Love School or Roadies or Splitsvilla, and across the network we are the kings of reality in this country.
Yes, true.
What we now see is more than 50% consumption happening on the back of CAC.
Okay.
Let me give you one more data point. What we now see is if we get 100 consumers on the back of a certain show, 50% of the consumers actually watch both full episodes and CAC.
Okay.
25% of the people see only the full episodes, and there is a 25% base which is only watching CAC.
That's interesting.
And that number actually, Anushri, has grown exponentially. So, which is at one level, and this specific segment at some level mirrors and demonstrates some bit of a catch up, which is they might be watching full episodes on TV, but they're coming on a digital platform to watch more of it because they are super fans. And at the other level, for the 50% of the consumers who are watching both full episodes and CAC, we have given them a reason to move from TV onto VOOT.
True.
And at some level, I think the OTT category and each of us, we are in the business somewhere of driving accelerated conversions from TV.
The other example was, in the West, you see Netflix buying TV networks content and vis-a-vis its content gets sold on TV networks, right?
Yeah.
In India, we haven't seen that pattern because all broadcasters have their own OTT play, so
Yeah.
obviously your competitor is not going to give it to you. However, what I've seen on VOOT is VOOT taking its OTT content to TV or bringing its TV content to this thing. The other, the interesting part is taking its OTT content onto TV, which I haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
And Silsila is one of the examples of it, right? I think it's going off VOOT now and
Yes.
going on to TV, right?
Yeah.
Prime time band, I guess.
Early prime time
Early
band,
prime
yeah,
time, yeah.
yeah.
So how has that happened and how is that helping the product?
That was again one big experiment that we did. Just like on CAC, we were the first OTT platform to do this at scale. Just the way we were the first platform in the country to do interactivity at scale. We were also the first platform to pick a show from the network which was ending on TV,
True.
create our own version of it, and then that specific version, when it starts doing so well, that it goes back to TV. And on Silsila, this is exactly what happened. When it was there on TV and when it used to come onto our platform the next day, we were doing about 1 million, 1.5 million odd kind of views. But it was possibly not doing great ratings for the Colors channel. We said, if Colors is planning to end the show, we, however, don't want to do that. We want to continue with the show on our own platform. And we created our own version of
And you had a
Silsila.
new storyline
And
also.
we had a new storyline. It was also made slightly younger,
Yeah.
with slightly different faces as well. We introduced newer protagonists. That number doubled from 1.5 million to about 3 to 4 million. Okay, and in fact, Silsila now is the first daily digital original in the country, and in a span of last 2 months itself, it has done more than 200 million views. So, which is going back to the point that I was earlier making, that what is an original, right? Every show, every content piece that we have on our platform is an original. It's not a fake, right? Unless you are saying original by definition in this new marketplace means something which has a newer storyline, reaching out to different kind of audiences and has a slightly edgy tonality to
Correct,
it, right?
yeah.
In that, if you were to compare to that, I think what Silsila has done for us, it has driven perception,
Yeah.
right? It has managed to get us a lot of advertising monies, and it has driven, most importantly, massive consumption, massive engagement, and massive retention.
Got it. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about breaking the barrier on TGs, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we were discussing, it's always thought to be male, urban, right? Who's
that's
the
right.
watcher. That does not seem to be the case anymore.
Yeah.
How were you able to break the barrier? And now, how does the viewership, package looks like?
So, I also told you, that for the longest time in this industry, the boardroom meetings used to have slides with a header, young male metro Hindi-speaking audiences,
True.
right? While TV had moved into launching its own set of regional channels, but on OTT it was still it was primarily Hindi content, Hindi language, not necessarily emanating from a demand perspective, but from a supply perspective, right? What has happened in the last 2-3 years is something meteoric. And on VOOT, now what we very clearly see is 53% plus consumers on our platform is actually led by females.
Okay.
Point number one. More than 25% of users coming onto a digital platform like VOOT, they're actually from less than 1 million markets. More than 25% of the audiences coming onto a platform, they're actually above the age of 30. It is not a platform, the category is no more about young teeny popper audiences,
True.
right? And which essentially leads to the moot point that OTT is no more about reaching out to the upwardly mobile audiences.
True.
OTT is now about reaching to the mainstream audiences, and it's very clearly become mass. And I think one of the biggest things that we have had to do, one is of course getting the kind of content that will appeal to women, that will appeal to people across age groups. I think the biggest job has been on the tech side and on the product side. very clearly differentiating how the experience of a new user who is coming from a tier 2, tier 3 market going to be different from a
Yeah.
consumer who comes from a top 6 metro markets.
That's why you have content across.
Yeah, so one is the content,
Yeah.
even the discoverability of the content,
Correct.
discoverability of the content on the platform. How do you make the journey of a first time user so seamless that he very clearly is able to A, find out what content he or she wishes to see, and B, then continues to go right deep down the rabbit hole, which is because what we very clearly see, consumers who watch more than, and this is a data point that I'm actually telling you from VOOT, consumers who watch more than 3 shows on our platform showcase 2x higher retention levels.
Okay.
Right? Which is actually at some level, Anushri, very, very intuitive, right? If a consumer comes onto your platform for not just one offering, but for multiple offerings, he or she will find reasons to keep on coming back to your platform again and again.
So there was an announcement of you guys increasing originals on
Yeah.
the platform, right?
Yeah.
By when do these originals will actually come?
Look, few of them we have already launched. I mean, as I said, even Silsila for us
Yeah.
is actually original content. It's been created by the VOOT team, reaching out to a very different kind of audience segment, and of course, numbers are of a different stature altogether. Few of them, apart from that, we have also launched a couple of them. We launched First Day Fantasy, we launched Feet Up, and we'll continue to launch many more of these in the next 6 to 12 months. What we are also realizing is while originals can be a great acquisition driver, right? But to be able to do that, you obviously also need to spend that much of money, marketing monies, because I think at some level we are also now increasingly in the business of garnering higher share of attention.
That brings us to the point of cost of customer acquisition.
And which I will come to. But acquisition, as I said, is just one part of the story.
True.
You know, over the last 3 years, we have got now more than 100 million consumers coming onto our platform, right? For me, the story is no more about continue to acquire consumers. What for me, the story is about engagement. And what we very clearly see on the back of one big marquee original launch, what a consumer finally comes in, he or she very clearly starts watching. The moment he or she starts watching the entire catalog of content, the depth of library of content is what actually helps him or her to stay on the platform.
Okay.
That's one part. The other part is, I think we've also started taking this term originals a tad too seriously, because a lot of the international majors have made it into a big thing.
Yeah.
The reality is, for them, originals is the only content that they have for a market like India.
Yeah.
Right? For us, originals is just possibly one tiny bit in the entire ocean of content. I have more than 100,000 plus pieces of content.
Correct.
One original
Yeah.
cannot necessarily change or make or mar the destiny of my platform.
True.
Yeah. The other bit, I think the way VOOT is playing to its strengths on the original story is that I have the entire network with me, right? And hence, I don't need to necessarily only keep on creating originals coming from the VOOT stable.
Correct.
But how do we start working with the entire network?
Yeah.
And it's not just about creating Hindi originals.
About
right?
regional.
About regional originals as well. So we are very, very closely working with teams as far as Colors Kannada is concerned, Colors Bangla is concerned, Colors Hindi is concerned.
Okay.
MTV is creating originals for us, and you will hear some news about it in the next couple of days itself. We are going to be launching one big original created by MTV Studios,
Okay.
premiering on VOOT. We also partnered with Viacom 18 Motion Pictures under the
Yes, I
banner of
remember.
Tipping Point,
Yeah, Tipping
which we
Point.
launched Shortcuts,
Yeah.
which was a set of standalone short movies, right? So our strength is that inherently from a network point of view, we are great content creators, right? So
You leverage
it's about
that.
how do you leverage that and how
Yeah.
do you drive synergies. So this is going to be pretty much happening at scale. And as I said earlier, one of the big things that we are focusing on is that originals in the regional language. because regional language, what it's doing again for a platform like VOOT is something stupendous. We are now seeing 20% of our consumption happening on the back of vernacular content, which is growing by 5x as compared to Hindi content, which is growing by 3x. And that number, year and a half back, Anushri, was 10-12%.
Sure.
Okay, so that's the story.
Of course, there's a lot happening.
Yeah.
And my last question would be, when do you think the market would stabilize? The market has stabilized in the sense that from a time where there was 32 or say 35 odd players, now there are what, a bunch, say 15, 16 max? Yeah. But further, when do you think the market would stabilize? You think it's a long game, like in the US also we have seen still going on. It hasn't stabilized. I mean, again, there are 5-6 players, but that kind of money being burned, that kind of money being burned to get customers, the only saving grace there is AVOD works. Over here, AVOD is still a very nascent concept. So how far or from where do you think the market will stabilize?
Couple of things, but I can also be very sure I'm not going to be predicting any timelines over here. It's a very, very nascent category. Okay, it's a category which is very clearly moved beyond the experimentation stage, gone beyond the ubiquity stage. It's straddling between usage and monetization, right? To start expecting a new category like this, which is changing decades of deep habit of watching content on TV, it is of course very clearly going to take some time. Not just the habit of consumers, but changing the habit of brands, advertisers and agencies. That's point number one. Point number two, you spoke about consolidation, you spoke about stabilizing.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
I think India is a very, very large, diversified market.
True.
Right? In a country like India, we have had more than 300 odd channels, right? And different channels reaching out to different consumer segments. You have different channels which are in your top 3 in a TN versus Kerala versus Bengal versus Maharashtra. So why the hell do we expect something very, very different from an OTT platform point of view? Having said that, in any category, the winner takes it all. Your top 3-4 platforms will of course garner more than 70-80% of the revenues.
I agree.
On the SVOD part, you spoke about, it's again at a stage where digital video as an overall category was 4 years back, 4 or 5 years back. It is still only attracting 2 to 3 million best paying consumers who are at least coming onto the platform and paying to watch content. Okay, AVOD numbers are of course now in millions, in hundreds of millions, and I very clearly see that AVOD market will certainly be touching $1 billion ad sales in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
During the same period, however, SVOD will actually show a much higher growth. If it's currently starting at a $200 million, it will certainly move to a $600 million. But of course, it's also at a smaller base itself. The last piece is businesses. Business heads like me, and I'm sure that's happening across the entire OTT category. We've all started looking at the cost of acquisition of a consumer.
True, and retain.
And what is the consumer lifetime value of the consumer, right? And cost of acquisition, not just merely on the back of marketing cost, right?
Distribution,
but distribution
content
cost
creation.
For every piece of content that gets streamed. The 10 billion minutes of monthly watch time that I'm talking about.
Per user, what is the cost?
The more consumer people watch, the more I have to pay as well. Because there's a streaming cost associated with it, right? So businesses have now started looking at which segment of the consumer is actually giving me the best CLTV, which is higher than the cost of acquisition, higher than the cost of streaming, everything put together. And I think now business, because this digital category is not a business of aggregates. This business is about at an individual user level.
So what is the TG for VOOT which you're eyeing?
Look, I get more than 50 million users every month. So I'm at some level playing a very, very large game. But what we very clearly see, consumers who actually come on my platform to watch both the full episodes as well as a lot of the CAC clips, the content around content clips, they actually show the highest retention.
Got it.
Now, and this is the And this segment is seen not from the point of content, but has to be seen from the point of user.
Okay.
And I think that's one big fundamental shift that we need to make. In the world of TV, the world was only about this content will get me these kind of consumers. But in the world of digital, it is he's my most loyal consumer.
So
he gets me, and for him, then what is the best content that I will make? What is the journey that he's going to have? What is his tech experience? Is my mobile site loading in the best optimal time possible?
Got it.
Or not?
Sure.
So the story, the mindset shift has to happen from content to the user.
Got it. Thank you so much, Akash. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you.
you.